So I wanted to look at some examples of games and films and interactive websites that I've seen that I feel are really interesting to see, like the cross-fertilisation of ideas, and that maybe might sort of inspire you. So they're not transmedia necessarily, but I think they're interesting examples of changes in storytelling and changing in the way that we're communicating to an audience. So this image is from a game called Fallout 3. Has anybody played Fallout 3? Okay, that's pretty cool. That's quite good. So it's an open world game, which means as the character, you can roam this kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland, and the story builds based on how I discover it. So it's been completely written, but the characters that I meet start to fill in the gaps in this story world. Now, if I look at this image, it reminds me of Mad Max, which is a film from a long time ago shot in Australia. And what's really interesting now is that this is a web series that's been inspired by Fallout, and it's been made by 4 Australian women. Now, what's interesting about this web series is that the writer is a gamer. And although it's a web series, when it launches at the end of April, it's presented as a map, and you can click on this map and you can uncover little story snippets and images. And when you unlock the webisodes, you can look at them in any order. So it's not like you have to sit down and watch episode 1 through to episode 8. You can pick and choose which order you want to watch them in. So that's somebody that's thinking about storytelling in terms of this big story world, and also this open story world that people can access it when they want. Is there anybody familiar with this or not familiar with Take This Lollipop? Okay, that's interesting. So Take This Lollipop, you could say it was a Facebook app, because what it asks you to do is click to connect with Facebook, and then you sit back. So after you've connected to this app, it's pretty much a movie experience. It's a short film. But what's really interesting about this is it uses the data that I've provided to Facebook to personalize this experience. So my face pops up on this pervert's computer, and then it's, you know, we see that he's now going to kill someone, and my map shows up on his computer, and he gets in the car, and this guy's racing to an address, and fluttering on the dashboard is my picture. And so it's this app went completely viral, for want of a better word. It's really popular. And what really captured people about this is the personalisation, that they were part of it. Now, I think one of the interesting things that I want to just mention here is about visual language in film, in sort of motion pictures. And, you know, it was a long time before people realised they could move the camera, and then it took time before people realised they could jump cut. We didn't have to sit there for the full kind of piece. And what we're starting to see now, I believe, is certain cues that would signal there might be some extra content online. So when I start to see a close-up of a business card or the close-up on someone's address, my expectations are already in the direction that I wonder what extra information I'm going to find if I go to that website or if I ring that number. And it used to be in the past that, you know, every number was 555 because it didn't go anywhere. And I think we're seeing a shift away from that to the idea that people will be able to call these numbers, they will be able to text and interact with these characters. But the language in the film, without a kind of pop-up to say, hey, you know, you should press this now, it's going to communicate to me that there's an opportunity if I want to engage, if I want to go deeper. So with House of Cards, this kind of, this style of popping up onto the screen, so here there's no close-up, but I'm reading this, that this is what's on his phone. And I wonder if this was shown, you know, 20 years ago, if people would realise that, okay, so he might not have had a mobile phone, but if he was reading a book and this kind of little bubble came up next to it, if I would appreciate that, what I'm looking at is what's on his phone. And we've seen this in like Sherlock Holmes, lots of different movies now. This is a Canadian production called Emily. And here this guy's looking at his phone. This is a message that's coming up on the screen here. And I think that it's becoming accepted that I interpret this information on the screen as a message he's reading. Now this is an interactive movie, or interactive web series actually. And what I liked about this was that I could scroll across the screen and choose which path that I wanted to go. Now there's nothing particularly new about an interactive, a branching narrative about being able to click and choose a particular route, but the navigation I think is interesting, that I'm not surprised or bothered by the fact that I've got these floating kind of messages on the screen. And it's actually quite seamless. So once I decide which route I want to take, then the motion just keeps going forward. It's quite interesting actually. I like what they've done with this. This is another example of how it's in a way it's kind of straightforward filmmaking, but it's giving me something to do. So this is available as an app, and it's also available on the website. And so this woman is describing a harrowing experience of traveling to the US, and you see there that it's implied there's something above the screen. Now she doesn't, I just chose this shot because it illustrated what I wanted to show, but she's not, normally she's talking directly to camera. But if I wander up with the mouse, then I start to be able to choose which part of the screen, which part of the story I want to focus on. And we've seen it in movies where we have these kind of split screens and there might be two different things going on at different times. But here I can choose. So it's not really a branching narrative, but it would encourage me to go through this several times to see, well, I know that there's something in parallel happening. Am I missing out on anything? This is a Canadian campaign, I guess, called 6 Million Deaths. Now, what's interesting about this, I think, is it's all in French, so I can't really understand what it's about, apart from what I could get, translated. It's an anti-tobacco industry campaign. But because I'm familiar with gaming, when I see these things pop up on the left, I recognise them as things that I'm supposed to collect, or that there's an anticipation there's going to be some benefit if I interact with this piece of entertainment, that I'm going to collect stuff. Now at the bottom you see this timeline. So I clicked on someone's briefcase and I discovered the camera object, and now the film branched. And what's really interesting about this is that the branching narrative is showed to me at the bottom. So I know that there's additional content for me to explore. Now my sort of Bartle player type is Explorer, so to me this is like brilliant. Well, okay, good. There's more stuff to dive into. And then they have this pop-up that asks me a particular question. So this was, I think in some ways it's a little bit jarring, but it's interesting that I can try to answer this question, get some points, and you can see along the bottom there how my progress has been, what opportunities I had to interact, how this is affecting the narrative. And just to finish up, just to say that I did achieve all the achievements, so I'm very proud of. So I wanted to look now at an example, I guess, of what transmedia storytelling is possible today. Now, in video games, we quite often see a mobile phone in the game being used as a kind of device to give me assistance if I get lost. Maybe there's a pop-up map. I'm thinking of games like Far Cry 3 or Sleeping Dogs. There've been many games. I've shown this sort of video, this audio diary here from BioShock. So in BioShock, it's essentially a first-person shooter, but it's a really rich story world. And as I go through this story world, sort of killing things predominantly, I can collect these audio diaries which fill in lots of the gaps of the story. And they're kind of non-intrusive because I don't have to stop and listen to them right then, but I can listen to them whenever I want. And I think that's quite interesting. Now, what if we were to take this type of idea and this idea of the mobile phone in the game, and instead of it being in the game, it's now in real life, it is my mobile phone.